A special holiday edition of the Maize and Blue Review. Happy Independence Weekend. It's July 5th, a little bit after 2 o'clock. We're live and on the air. When I say we, they're looking right at former Wolverine Jerry Diorio. I'm Dennis Fithian. Jerry, it's great to see you. Nice outfit. You look like you're ready to go.
Great to be a Michigan Wolverine, Denny. Happy 4th of July. You know, Denny, July 4th, 1776, I was thinking about it. I don't think this is hyperbole either. I think it's one of the top 5 or 10 greatest days in the history of mankind.
Top 5 days in the history of mankind. Well, I will say
one of the top 5 to 10 days in the history of mankind.
Well, number 1 was January the 8th of this year. That's when Michigan won the national championship. Now, let me see if I can get a couple other ones in there that could rival.
Hey, Denny, I don't think you're going to have Michigan State people and Ohio people celebrating that with you. I appreciate it. I celebrate it with you, no question. I'm just saying something we never mind. Go ahead, Denny. Keep going.
You know, you can cover me in history and everything else, but there could be an argument that when really things were ratified, it was a different date, and all from the different times when you signed. But we do look at July 4th. It's so I'm with you on that. Let me think of what the other dates would be. So I don't know. The first Christmas might be there. I don't know.
Denny, that's where I was going. I mean, I'm a Christian. I got no problem admitting it. I'm proud of it. My first 3 days were birth, death, resurrection.
Okay.
How's that? And then I say the 5th day would probably be the 4th of July, 1776, and I might even move that up.
And I'll go with January 8th, 2024. That's still going to be on there.
Good enough, Denny. I appreciate it and respect that date all with you, brother. I'm with you on that.
I'm going to stay with you on that. Now, somebody who coached so long in the high school ranks, and then, you have to be a teacher then as well. I know teachers, sometimes they get a bad rap in the off season because people are like, well, they've got, all 3 months to just sit around and do whatever they want. But, not as a high school coach, Jerry, you got to get things going in August. So I would say back in the day, this month, I don't know what your June was like. Sometimes the calendar spilled into June, but, July was your month back in the day, right?
Week, maybe. We got a week off in July. Okay, a week off in July. Denny, it was always funny with me and some of my colleagues, basketball coaches, hockey coaches, wrestling coaches. The summer was always it was tough because we were working with kids and trying to get their time, get our time with the kids and also trying to respect the times of other teams and other sports that they participate in. That July dead week was always good. And it kind of separated the other sports because a lot of the other sports really concentrated on June and doing all their camps and stuff in June, whereas July was mostly focused with football and in the spring sports, girls volleyball, those types of things, track. But June was the month that the coaches kind of fought over for the players' time. And then we would have that week off. And I say week in quotes because coaches never took a week off. I guarantee you that. And then July was we're gearing up for it, man. We're moving into the backstretch. We're going.
Yeah, well, you guys worked hard, and the teachers do. I say it jokingly about having 3 months off and everything else. Once the school ends, I mean, you got to get ready for the new year, and then if you're a coach, your time is I know if you broke that down hourly, it's not like you guys are sitting around just raking in the money for being a coach at the high school level, right?
No, Denny. I don't think anybody would argue that. At least in the state of Michigan. Now, maybe in Florida and Texas and some of those other states, maybe, but not Michigan.
Oh, you can get paid a pretty penny being a high school coach?
From what I've understood, Denny, yeah, there are some coaches down in Florida and down in Texas that are making pretty good money with little responsibility in the school itself. The problem with those positions are they're not real secure. They're as good as your winning record at the end of the year. So, it's a real gamble.
Jerry, we look to today's show. We're going to ask folks. We have breakout candidates. We have both selected 3 apiece. We have a question of the day that we're going to get to, and it surrounds Michigan football. We will start with recruiting. We have some breaking news right out of the gate when you look at Michigan's recruiting targets. Coming up on the 8th, Olish is going to make a decision later this month. Philip Wright, the wide receiver out of Louisiana, is set to commit today. Kamar Archie, a linebacker out of New Jersey, has made his decision. It was just about an hour ago. And Archie is staying put on the East Coast. He says he is going to Rutgers. So Michigan losing out on the 6'1" linebacker.
You know, Denny, I'd like to address something right here, right now. I think this is a good time to address it. This is why I was so adamant that we have to secure our recruiting base. Schiano gets back into Rutgers. All of a sudden, these New Jersey East Coast kids are trying to stay at Rutgers and play at Rutgers. They're going to have that loyalty to their area, to the region that they live in. And so this is why I was always adamant about we need to secure our recruiting base states always. That should be first and foremost, because we're not always going to have these East Coast connections. We're not always going to have poor performances on the Rutgers end or the Maryland end where these kids are starting to look outside. That's why I've always been adamant. You have to secure Michigan. You have to secure Ohio. You have to secure Western PA. You have to secure Chicago, Illinois, and northeastern part of Illinois. Those are 4 base areas that Michigan has always done well in. We have a great loyalty in those areas, and those are areas we have to secure always. And this young man going to New Jersey shouldn't really surprise anybody. He's staying close to home. He's got a coach that he feels very comfortable with, Schiano. The coach has proven he can win at Rutgers. So this is why you always want to try to secure your recruiting bases.
Jerry, it doesn't happen often, but once in a while we get an Ohio State fan that comes in, and we can see here is one today. Mr. Mello, he says that Michigan is down bad. So do you have any thoughts about Michigan being down bad as we sit here on July 5th? I have a thought there.
Well, I remember Michigan was down real bad after the 2020 season. So, whatever.
Yeah, I don't – if this is down bad, we'll take it, Mello. We'll take down bad, being the defending champs and, having stuffed you in a locker the last 3 years. And as great as your program is in the offseason and all the talent that you've assembled and everything else, you guys better win that game coming up on the 30th of November, or that city will just I don't know what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. Did it just go up in flames, or was it I would just keep running for run north if you lose that game, and don't turn back, because if you turn back, it'll all turn to salt. Why not? For what happens to Sodom and Gomorrah? That's what's going to happen to Columbus when you guys lose that last game in November. So have your fun. I don't know why you're having fun here in the off season. I'd keep your mouth shut, considering that you haven't beat Michigan in 3 years. I mean, you don't really have a leg to stand on. When you guys win all the time, you won 8 in a row. Yeah, I mean, it was tough. It was tough, but, you know, it wasn't once. It wasn't twice. It's been 3 times. So run your mouth all you want. And it's, you know, if this is down bad, Michigan will take it.
Danny, you know, it goes back to this, to what, you know, what we've been saying here in the past. Ohio has had plenty of top 3 recruiting classes in a row in the last decade. You would think that would mean total dominance every year, year in and year out. When you're beating your main rival every year in recruiting, and then you lose to them at the end of the year, well, now we got to start thinking about some other things. Maybe those 5 stars aren't exactly the 5 stars we're thinking about, or they're not as productive as those 5 stars should be. Maybe we might want to think about where production might come from a little bit better, because obviously those 5 stars have not done it the last 3 years.
We've been talking about real important dates. I'll tell you, 11/30/24 may be the day that Ohio State's trajectory goes straight down. You lose to Michigan 4 times in a row. What can you do? You've done nothing but, you know, have the talent. You've spent every dollar that you could pull from every liquor store in Columbus on your team. And, you know, all the money that would be going to lottery and mud flaps and everything else, it's all gone to the Buckeyes. And if you lose that game, that will be the day, 11/30/24, that the trajectory shoots straight down and Ohio State is out of it. All right, I'm going to spend all day talking about.
And one other thing, Denny, and one other thing I want to talk about Ohio. They have a built-in recruiting base. Ohio football is one of the top 5 high school footballs. High school football. Ohio football is one of the top 5, I would say, in the country, as far as production and competition. So, I mean, Ohio has that gateway that puts you in a position where you're going to be competing with the top recruiting classes year in and year out.
Yeah. You know, Youngstown in particular, you know, that's.
I'd always say Youngstown, but that's another day.
That's fertile ground. Let's get to the breakout players this year for Michigan. First, I want to tell you, like I always tell you, and I hope you heed the words. Join the Maize and Blue Review today by going to michigan.rivals.com. You want to know what's going on with recruiting? This is the place to go. This is the place to be. You're looking for those feature stories. You're excited about the upcoming season. This is the place to be, the Maize and Blue Review. Over the weekend, I say it's the weekend. It feels like the weekend. Yesterday, July 4th, Trevor McHugh putting out a feature story on why Samaj Morgan will be the breakout player for the Wolverines. Went through and looked at, you know, you like advanced statistics, you like analytics. Trevor filled it up when it came down to Samaj Morgan and why he will be the breakout player of the year for Michigan. So without further ado, that gets us to our breakout players, Jerry. And I asked Jerry to give me 3, and I came up with 3. And if our breakout players were the same, I have to admit I was going to change mine just to have more players to talk about. But Jerry and my 3, they didn't match. So we've got 6 breakout players to go over. Jerry, your first one is number 7 in the backfield, none other than the one-armed bandit. Speaking of where our guy went, Old Mello. Hey, Old Mello, Mello might be like, what are you telling me? Donovan Edwards, he already broke out. He broke out down in Columbus when he kept running wild and ran in the fourth quarter, those 75 and 85-yard runs.
Denny, that was in a backup role. Let's make sure everybody understands that. That was in a backup role. Just want to throw that out, Denny. But go ahead, keep going.
Well, that's it. I mean, there you go. Old Donovan Edwards. You guys are sitting around here talking about, oh boy, Ohio State. There you go. Yeah, well, you knock your own defense at your own peril about how Donovan Edwards was able to light you up, and when he was able to do that. But tell us why you would put Donovan Edwards as a breakout candidate.
I think he's going to be the best running back in the conference this year, and I'll tell you why. Number one, first of all, like we said, this would not be a surprise. This is not a surprise kind of guy to put in that breakout. When you don't start or you have limited starts, I think that puts you in a category where you can call this young man a breakout. But like you mentioned, Denny, he already busted out in Columbus 2 years ago and put on a performance. I'm looking back, and everybody's high on Henderson. He's a great running back. Don't get me wrong. Henderson is a great running back. But he's in a system that's not allowing him to be the primary person or the most recognized. He's in a system that is trying to spread the ball around and get it to receivers. I looked last year at the statistics, and Blake Corum was number 2 in rushing last year, and I believe he was like 1,270 yards. Henderson was number 4. But the difference is Henderson only had like 925 yards. Donovan had almost 500 yards, and the next Ohio State running back had 300 or something like that. When you total the two up, you're looking at Michigan at well over 17, almost 1,800 yards between those two, and Ohio with 1,200, almost 1,300 with those two. What I'm saying there is the system is going to allow Donovan Edwards to break out and have a phenomenal year in the Big Ten. And that's why not only am I saying he's going to have a great year for Michigan, I believe he's going to be the best running back in the Big Ten this year because he can run the ball. We know that. He can run the ball between the tackles. We know that. He has the patience to pop and exploit holes. We know that. We also know he can catch passes out of the backfield. And finally, he can throw. So we have a running back that has performed in a three-dimensional position. And I like Donovan Edwards. I think he's going to have a standout year, and I think he's going to be one of those top elite running backs in the Big Ten, if not the best.
Old Buckeye Mello wanted to know what Donovan Edwards did last year, and he in the championship game when Ohio State was sitting home and watching it on TV, Donovan Edwards in the first quarter had runs of 41 and 46 yards for touchdowns in the national championship game. And, it's all Michigan needed. They won the game 34-13. Donovan Edwards won the championship game. Donovan Edwards, one thing about him, he comes up big in big games. The national championship game, you mentioned that touchdown. That was the first, the Big Ten championship game 3 years ago after Michigan beat Ohio State in 21. He showed in that game. I remember this is the freshman. He stuck his arm out, caught the ball. They needed him 2 years ago when Blake Corum went down. He was banged up, just had the one arm, and then he ran wild down in Columbus. The bigger the game, the better Donovan Edwards plays. So, and he's put on a little weight, and he's got a great attitude heading into this year. So I'm with you. I think Donovan Edwards could have a great.
And by the way, Denny, did you mention the Penn State game last year?
No, I didn't, but that's I'm remiss.
He busted that game open. And he busted that game open. Those two runs early in the second quarter busted that game open, made Penn State reevaluate what they were doing on defense, and even going into the locker room, they still couldn't stop Michigan's offense running the ball 32 times right down their throat. So I'm sold on our system, and I'm sold on our running back that's going to be the premier runner in that system.
I got you there. So let's go.
And that's what I'm talking about, Mello. Solely last year. Washington, Penn State did a lot of good things throughout the year. And if you remember, Mello, most of our team was out after midway through the third quarter. So most of our first teamers were out midway through the third quarter anyway. So just for your thought.
Yeah, a big game, Dono. My breakout candidate, I will go with Michigan wide receiver Tyler Morris. And the picture is from the Rose Bowl when he scored, I believe, the first touchdown. Maybe it was the second one when he burned down the sideline against Alabama. That's where you look and you say, this guy, as much as we talk about Michigan's going to run the ball, and they'll probably run it more with Alex Orji if he ends up being the quarterback. If you're just in Colston Loveland, he's like a wide receiver. But if you just put him over here for a second, and you talked about Samaj Morgan, actually the three M's, Frederick Moore. I saw Devin Gardner was on social media yesterday saying, watch out for Frederick Moore. It sounded like he would be his breakout candidate. He had that touchdown in the spring game. Morris.
A lot of speed with him.
That speed in the Rose Bowl. And he has come up big on some third down situations. And if you just listen to the talk that comes out of any camp or any practice for Michigan, they all seem to say Tyler Morris. Everything points to Tyler Morris, being that guy, being the number one. Was that the X wide receiver if you're the number one? So I'll put Tyler Morris there as my breakout candidate, even over Frederick Moore, even over Samaj Morgan. I'll go with number 8, the Maize and Blue.
Well, he had a great game against Alabama last year. He had a lot of great appearances. The thing about Michigan last year was so deep. You didn't realize who was coming in and who was coming out all the time. And players were making names for themselves and not in a real big starting role. I mean, he did some nice things all last year, but he really busted Alabama open early. And this is a good returning receiver. I think he's going to have a great year. And I'm with you, Denny. I think he can be one of those guys that can have a breakout year and really extend the defenses. And don't think Orji can't hit that long ball.
Donovan Edwards, Jerry's number 1 breakout candidate. My number 1, Tyler Morris. Let's go to Jerry's breakout candidate number 2. You're going on the defensive side, Josaiah Stewart. What's your reasoning here?
Well, first of all, I think Michigan's defense is going to be the best in the country again this year. I think we've got some phenomenal players. 2 preseason All-American picks with Mason Graham and Johnson on the edge. That's really dangerous. And when you have that much talent in the middle, I don't think many people are going to try the middle against Michigan. You've got 3 defensive linemen that have tremendous amount of experience in those 2 positions in the middle. You've got Barham, who, if it wasn't for Stewart, I would have maybe picked him as our breakout guy on defense. But with those guys in the middle, it's going to be real hard to have a game plan that's going to attack that gut. And so our edge players are going to have to be extremely solid this year. And I think Stewart has proven himself to be one of the best at returning coming back this year. And I think he's going to be one of those leaders on the defense that's going to secure us being the best defense in the country this year. I think Stewart had a great year last year, a phenomenal game against Alabama. I think he had a sack and the last play when he crushed Milroe on that last play. So I think Stewart is going to have a huge year. I think he's one of those leaders coming back on the defense. And it just seems in the last 3 years or so, our edge players have made tremendous differences. And that's why I'm looking at Josaiah Stewart.
Yeah, and I like what he brings to the table. And when I go to, it worked out nice here. When I go to my breakout candidate, Derrick Moore. The first time I saw Derrick Moore after he committed, he played in some kind of all-star game, and he tore it up. And I just looked at him and I said, "Wow, this guy doesn't look like he's just finished up high school. Maybe he looks like he's an NFL defensive end." Wow. And I saw that the freshman game. I thought, "Wow, this guy looks like he's a 4-year NFL defensive lineman already," and it just continues that way. He's the prototypical size, but I like when you have different. You're bringing different tools to the party here. Stewart burning around the edge more, maybe a strength guy more there, but these two, you'll be hard pressed to find 2 guys that can get to the quarterback better than Josaiah Stewart and Derrick Moore. And we'll repeat it because it's it's something that's worth reminding everyone. Jerry's already mentioned it when it was the last play of the game and Michigan needed a stop against Jalen Milroe and Alabama in overtime in the Rose Bowl. On one side, you had Josaiah Stewart. On the other side, you had Derrick Moore. So that's why people are so excited in part about Michigan's defense. These guys, they weren't starters. So I don't know. They're easy breakout candidates, Jerry.
But and here's the other thing, Denny. We know these players are not. They're not going to get the kind of reps they would get at some of these other schools because they're not going to be playing all the time. I mean, we've got TJ Guy coming in the defensive at the outside. He's going to be doing a lot of subbing, and we've got some other kids that are going to be doing a lot of subbing there too. So breakout players on defense. You're probably looking at about 60% of the reps they would have on other teams. And I like how we're going to be fresh. We've got a lot of depth. And I think our outsides are going to be, our edge players are going to be very happy that they have those three big boys in the middle and Barham. I think they're gonna be very happy with their position.
Right, I like it. And let's take a look at Jerry's third breakout candidate. I'm going to say not a surprise that one of them is going to be an offensive lineman. Greg Crippen, you go right to the middle at center. You go with number 51 in the maize and blue.
Denny, Harb's got some pushback when he drafted Alt in the first round. And from the San Diego fans, and they wanted a playmaker. And Harb said, I always thought offensive linemen were playmakers too, and I would agree with that. We're going to have a great running game. We're going to have to be phenomenal up front. We're going to have a center that can put us in the blocking schemes that we need to be in, that can recognize the defensive fronts. And we're going to be running a quarterback this year. So our offensive line has got to be stellar, sharp as a tack. And I think Crippen at center has got experience. He's played behind phenomenal centers at Michigan. It's his turn. It's his time to break out. And I think Crippen is going to lead one of the best offensive lines in the country, the University of Michigan this year. And he's going to put us in the right positions.
I like it. Jay thinks that the Anderson's a sleeper on that offensive line. Hey, you'll take it. I'll get to my candidate number 3. I go to the transfer Jaishawn Barham. Now, look, I watched Michigan play Maryland last year, but I have not seen Jaishawn Barham in the maize and blue, but I have talked with a few people that have been down to practices, and the first thing that comes out of their mouth is that it's pretty obvious that Barham is an exceptional player. Who stands out? Barham. Almost every person that goes down and watches Michigan says Barham stands out. He looks like an NFL player already. Looks like he could be playing for the Detroit Lions already. Looks like he will be a difference maker on the Michigan defense. I'm sold. I'm sold on Barham. And like I said, I haven't seen him play. So he's my breakout candidate coming in. Sight unseen, Jerry. I'm going with Jaishawn Barham. He'll be wearing number 0 for the maize and blue.
Denny, that was my second choice behind Stewart on the defensive side. I'm just looking at that middle. I'm a coach. I'm preparing to play Michigan. I'm an offensive coach. What am I going to attack? I'm looking at those two inside with Benny and whoever else, if they put Etta in there or whoever. I mean, they've got deep on those 1 and 3 technique players. I mean, we've got a lot of players there. But Barham just makes you not even want to look there. Barham is one of those guys that you say, well, that's strike 3. Let's take the trap out of the playbook this week. Or let's take this play out of the playbook this week because it ain't going to work with those 3. And that's going to allow us to come off the edges and attack from the defense's edges with our guys. And Barham, I think, is just going to make it very scary and not real smart or productive to go and attack the middle of the Michigan defense. I think Graham, Grant, Benny, Atta, those guys, yeah, that's fine. But when you add Barnum in that middle, better look elsewhere.
All right, let's give a recap, and then we'll go over what the people are saying, Jerry, when it comes down to their breakout candidates. Jerry went with Donovan Edwards and Josaiah Stewart and Greg Crippen. I went with Derrick Moore and Tyler Morris and also Jaishawn Barham. So here's what we're looking at when it comes down to the people, Jerry. And I want you to just weigh in what you think of these breakout candidates, their potential. Scott says Ernest Hausman.
Well, Hausman, he's going to have he's got to have a good year, and the nice thing about Hausman, and the thing I like with Hausman is with all the other talent around him, he might get forgotten. He might be forgotten at times, and so Hausman's going to have some opportunities to make some big things happen. There, people are going to be concentrating on Barnum, Graham, Grant, Stewart. They're going to be concentrating on those other ones, and Hausman might be the beneficiary of that, and might have an opportunity to make huge plays on the Michigan defense, and he's capable. I mean, let's not forget, this guy played plenty last year. He played at Nebraska. This is obviously a good ball player, and I think he's going to. Yeah, I think that's a good one, Scott. I like that one, and that one was I was contemplating that name as well, Scott.
Scott, I'm just noticing has put a lot of breakout candidates out here. Here's Jack Tuttle and Cole Cabana. What do you think about those guys as breakout candidates?
Well, I think the quarterback, Tuttle, we're going to have to find out how healthy he is. I mean, he didn't get any snaps in the spring. That bothers me a ton. And going into the season, he's going to be susceptible. And so I'm a little bit nervous about Tuttle in that position. I wish he would have had a better spring. I wish he would have been able to participate a little bit more in spring and see different things. So I'm a little bit hesitant on Tuttle. Who's the other one we mentioned?
Cole Cabana. What about Cole Cabana?
Cole Cabana. I would have liked to have seen him in the spring game. Honestly, I would have liked to have seen him in the spring game. I thought there were times where Dunlop made some really nice runs, really powerful runs, showed his strength. I'm thinking maybe could Cole Cabana have broken those plays? I don't know, because Cabana is fast. I coached against the kid, and he's a stud. He is an absolute player. But my fear is if Marshall gets in there, Marshall could go right up to the top in a running back battle, and not that I'm afraid of it. I like it, but if I'm Cole Cabana, I might be a little bit nervous about that.
Newber mentions TJ Guy and Khalil Mullings. Mullings could be a touchdown specialist, Guy in the mix with the edges coming in, and I could see that myself. What about this pair of players? What about these guys?
Well, I think Mullins is going to be a great compliment to Donovan. I'm just thinking Donovan's going to be the leader in the backfield, and that's why I went with them. And in my opinion, he hasn't really started, so I put him in that category where he could be a breakout player. But Mullins, I think you're right. The kid's a touchdown maker. He's going to be one of those guys that he's going to be hard to stop down inside the 5. He's a great compliment with Donovan, and so I think our backfield is got a lot of horses in that stable, and we're going to be fine there. And Mullins, if Mullins can find the end zone consistently, that could come back and say, yeah, he was very valuable and a big, huge breakout player for us.
And here's a Zeke Berry being mentioned. I could see Zeke Berry. Michigan with Zeke Berry, who was made available after the spring game. I don't think that was an accident. He had a very good spring. If I had to predict who was going to line up opposite of Makari Page as a starter against Fresno State, my guess would be Zeke Berry. So playing safety on that defense, it's his time. I could see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Barry's ready to go. He's a good ball player. I think he's matured to this point, and it's his time to shine. And I think that was another guy I looked at and wondered maybe he should be an impact player. Jar Hill is another one. I thought, people are going to start attacking that number 2 corner. It's not real smart to go after Johnson. I don't think that's going to be in too many people's game plan. Let's go after Johnson. Hopefully. So that other corner is going to have a huge year. And Hill had a great spring. I mean, we saw him in the spring game do some nice things, and I think he's going to. It's his time, and I think he's going to be ready.
This would be a good question of the day, which we're going to get to in just 1 minute. We'll take 2 more of the breakouts. But here's a question. Do you think the Michigan defense will be just as good as last year? What do you think, Jerry?
I think potentially it's got the potential. Potentially, I think it's got every ability to be better than last year. I think our linebacker inside, I think Barham, don't get me wrong. Our guys last year, Barrett, Colson, phenomenal football players. But you're looking at 2 very experienced defensive linemen, an inside linebacker, Barham, who's going to be able to utilize those 2, keep people off of them. That's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the key is that other corner and the safety spot there. Love the front 7. Feel really good about where they're at there, and the depth at linebacker. So I'm with you on that. Let's see what happens with safety and corner. But I'm sitting there and like what is happening. Let's get to that question of the day. Jerry, we'll give you first crack, and we'll see what the people think of our question of the day. I'm asking you what your confidence level is in Michigan this year if Alex Orji is not the starting quarterback. There's been some, let's call it a scuttlebutt about that Jack Tuttle could be the starting quarterback. It's hey, you want to chalk it up to some July talk, like talking about, quarterbacks. There's 2, there's 3, there's 4, there's 5. There hasn't been a quarterback that has taken a lot of snaps and certainly hasn't attempted a lot of passes. So you're going to have the quarterback get talked about quite a bit. But Jerry, coming out of spring, it seemed obvious that it was going to be Alex Orji who was quarterback 1. It's been a while for the spring game. I'm just asking you to take Orji and put him over here and now assess your confidence level. What is your confidence level in Michigan this year if Alex Orji is not the starting quarterback?
Well, Denny, I go back to 1997, and if I remember correctly, Brian Greasy got the starting job over a couple of other quarterbacks. I can't remember the one gentleman's name, number 12.
Dreisbach?
Yep, Dreisbach, Greasy, and there was one other, if I'm not mistaken, that was competing for the job. So in other words, what I'm saying is 1997, we're looking for a quarterback to lead our team, and at the end of the year, we're the national title holder. Okay? And why did we win the national title that year? Defense. I think if Alex Orji is not our quarterback, we'll be fine. I've been saying all along, you got to have two playbooks this year. You got to have one with Alex Orji where there are design quarterback runs, quarterback power, quarterback Zorro or zone, outside zone, whatever, quarterback ISO. We've got to have design runs in there for our quarterback because that's what his strength is, and an RPO package. After that, you're looking at Donegal, Warren, and Tuttle, and these are more of your drop back type quarterbacks, your more traditional type quarterbacks, and that's where that second playbook. And I'm not saying a completely different playbook. I'm just saying tweaks where you got to now get back into the passing game if one of those 3 quarterbacks is in there. But I don't see any real issue or urgency if Alex Orji isn't our quarterback. I think we've got plenty of other talented players all across the field on both on offense and defense, and we'll be just fine. Fine.
Yeah, I think that they could be just fine. My confidence, if you're just talking about me, my confidence level, thinking that, Orji went through the whole spring and he was the quarterback one, and that feels like it's the game plan to me that he's going to be the guy. And the variance with Orji, he could be great. He could go out there, he could run this offense the way that he could move the ball on the ground. If he finds some, confidence in the passing game and develops along, he's got an excellent defense and a running game, all those kind of things that complement that a quarterback that's learning on the job there. He could be awesome. He could go the other way, and not be. But so I'm thinking somewhere in the middle, and he develops. My confidence would be down just because I don't know Tuttle. Depending on him, depending on what you're talking about, backup quarterbacks. I feel like watching Florida State last year. Their top guy goes down. Next thing you know, they were half the football team. It's so important, but my confidence would be lowered a lot if it was not Orji as the starting QB. It's tough, to go out there and produce a legitimate, starting QB. I would say, though, for Michigan, and it's a little bit to your point, is that a lot of teams in the country, their starting quarterback goes down. It is big trouble, and it's important for Michigan. Don't get me wrong there, but it was just 3 years ago, and Cade McNamara did a nice job, but he didn't light the world on fire. He was nice. He was a nice quarterback, nice completion percentage. You just have to find a game manager, and you can win football games. But I would be shaken a little bit if it wasn't Alex Orji.
I kind of was just thinking about, who Alex Orji reminds me of a little bit. Remember Smith from 2006 at Ohio?
Troy Smith?
Troy Smith. That's who he kind of reminds me of a little bit. Even the same number, isn't it? Number 10?
Troy Smith was number 10, correct.
Okay, so it kind of reminds me a little bit about that. I met Troy Smith at a fundraiser one time. Great man, nice young man, very respectful, and Tressel utilized his strengths tremendously, and I think kind of Alex Orji is in that maybe that same mindset.
Well, if it's I like what I see from him. Certainly the strength, but I think it's going to be a work in progress out there. But I think he can get it done. I do also think that when it's July and you're unsettled at the position, there's going to be a lot of people talking about different guys getting in there, and Tuttle is an experienced journeyman, so he has that. You have Davis Warren, who's a real wild card, fought a disease in high school, came back, the pandemic, and then we've just, we saw him throw that 55-yarder. You've kind of wowed everybody in the spring games. So you're like, that's a wild card. But then after that, you're getting, the Denegal and the young guys, Jaden Davis. So I'd remember in the
Warren.
Yeah, Davis Warren. Was it the 2003 season heading in? It was the eve of the 2003 season. And I'm telling everybody, Matt Gutierrez is going to be the starting quarterback for Michigan. But he just had some arm trouble. And it ended up being Chad Henne. And nobody knew about it till the morning of the opener in 2003. I think it was against Miami. It was against the MAC team. That, here's Chad Henne, a true freshman, gets to start for Michigan, and it worked out. Henne was pretty good.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. So it can go that way. I want to look to see 2001. It was against Miami Central Michigan. I think that was that was already Navarre. That's it. That's where I'm at with it. So, all right, Jerry, let's see. We have some thoughts from the people. Let's go through and see what they're saying. Moose loves Davis Warren. And Moose says if he's the coach, he's the guy. Scott wants to know, what about a rotation? What about a rotation, Jerry?
I think Lou Holtz was the one who said it. If you got two quarterbacks, you got none. So I think you got to try to settle in one, give him the reps, and live and die with it, and sprinkle in the reps with the backup. So I'm not a big fan of alternating. I know Florida did it well with Spurrier as a coach and the two quarterbacks that he was utilizing. I just haven't seen it done well many times. And I think for a new first-year coach, that's going to be that would be difficult. So
I agree with you.
I'm not crazy about that rotation. I think we pick one, go with it, and let's play football.
I agree with you. Look, the one thing, here's the people. Like, some people feel like it's an orgy, but then there's a lot of Tuttle. There's a lot of Warren. And then, if we're asking people to rank them, look at this. Moose has got a depth chart of Warren, Orgy, Davis, Tuttle, and Denigal. So it's all over the place. Something to talk about for a little while here in July.
Again, those other three quarterbacks, I think they're good managers. I think they would be good managers for the team. Put us in the right position. Smart. They'll be okay in that position. Orgy's the kind of guy who's going to be an impact player. He's going to run the ball. He's going to make defenses have to prepare for his run, and it's built into the system, so it's not something new, and that's why he's an impact. He could be an impact.
When you're talking about a two quarterback system, and you mentioned Spurrier, Chris Leak was a pocket passer, and he was a pretty accurate guy. I know I talked to somebody down there in Charlotte. They compared Jaden Davis to Chris Leak. That's who he reminded him of, having watched both players in high school and then Leak at Florida. Tebow came in short yardage situations when they won the championship.
Yeah, right.
He was a true freshman. That was a little different. John's talking about a couple of years ago when Cade was the starter. Harbaugh did put JJ in some different spots, but he was mostly a runner too, except a few occasions, Michigan State being one of them. And if Michigan doesn't, if they don't make the college football playoff, there is a lot more heat on Harbaugh and that decision on how it ended up playing out with both of those quarterbacks. There was the handoff, or there was the fumble, and they talked about the meshed point. It was a little bit high there, and then JJ fumbled the ball out of bounds too. And believe me, there was a lot. It was building. There was criticism after that loss. If Michigan doesn't make the college football playoff, there would have been a gigantic amount of criticism, gigantic amount more of criticism if Michigan doesn't get it done that year, but they did, so it was a little bit different.
Yeah, there weren't too many times in the last 3 years that I questioned Harbaugh, but that was one of them. That was definitely one of them. We have the lead. We got the ball deep in their territory. We scored. Pretty much game's over. We go and we play Ohio State. Bringing JJ in, I think that was a gamble. I think Harbs lives in that arena. That's where he's comfortable at, making those types of decisions, and that one backfired on him. So, again, that's the kind of stuff that can happen when you have two. Think about it this way, Denny. I got two quarterbacks. I got one cadence from one and one cadence for another. That means the timing. Is the timing exact? I don't know. That might not be. Am I taking the snap from center the same way? Okay. All that comes into play. Calling the plays in the huddle. The audibles at the line. So that's something in my opinion, you want one quarterback, stay with them, work with them, and dribble with this number two.
Yeah, I didn't like it in 98. Certainly didn't like it in 99. And Lloyd Carr comes out and says, look, I like both of these guys. I really like Tom Brady. I really like Drew Henson. And then, he had to take a million questions, and he would get so mad after a while. I like them both. He's like yelling at everyone. But in a few situations, the Michigan State game, Henson played the second half, and Michigan ended up losing that game. Henson came in late, or Brady came in late and was throwing the ball all over the place. And I remember being at that game and telling the people on the post game, look, Michigan State's defensive line, they were way too good. It wouldn't have mattered. But seeing what Tom Brady was able to do after he was done at Michigan, I would have liked to have given Tom Brady, the full game to see what he would have been able to do.
Yeah, exactly. But remember, you're talking about Drew Henson. I saw Henson throw the ball against Purdue. There was one ball that he threw. It had to be a 40 to 50-yard rope. I don't think this ball got off the ground more than 15 yards, and it was right on our receiver down in Purdue in West Lafayette. So we're not talking about Tom Brady being questioned by somebody who's not that good. Henson was one heck of a quarterback, one of the strongest arms I've ever seen. Him and Mallet, God rest his soul, him and Mallet had some of the strongest arms I've ever seen.
Yeah, that game against Drew Brees where Michigan lost by 2 points. That was a great duel between the Hall of Famer. Look, Drew Henson would have been a first-round pick if he decided to go to the pros, and he would have been the leading guy if he came back from Michigan in his senior year for the Heisman Trophy. And who knows what he would have been able to do if he would have stuck to football. You can't serve two masters like that trying to be a first-round pick, and you can't be Aaron Judge, and be Peyton Manning too. I mean, you had to pick one, and he wasn't picking one, and then he finally picked baseball. So, but he was a great high school, of course, and great college quarterback ultimately too. There you go. Start talking about rotating quarterbacks. You almost have to get to Henson and Brady.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, if people like to talk about that Illinois game, they're at the end. They were doing some things in that. That would have been 98. All right, Jerry, great job. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll look forward to talking with you next week.
God bless America, Denny, on this July 5th, one day after July 4th. Hail to the victors.
There he is, Jerry Diorio. Smash that like button.